Hello and welcome to the second video in my Minecraft basic modding tutorial series. In the previous video you will have set up your workspace and should be ready to crack on with creating your mod. In this video I will be adding custom items. They'll be very basic at this stage, but they will be used in future videos going forward. We will be adding Naquadah dust and Naquadah ore. So let's get started. Okay, so picking up from where we left it last time at the end of the workspace setup video, let's open up the main entry file. Mine's called tutorial mod, and what we're going to do is create a reusable public static mod ID. You can call this mod underscore ID or mod ID. This is going to now contain our mod ID. And the reason we're doing this is because we are going to be referencing this mod ID a lot going forward. That may be in registering items and other places later on. So having this in one place means that for a lot of the places where we're using the ID in the code, we can change it in one place here and it'll update everywhere. So let's consume that mod ID. There we go. The next thing we're going to do is just add a logger that we can get hold of. So a central logger that we can use to debug output debug messages throughout our mods as we're going forward. We're not going to use it right now, but it's handy to have when you want to just bung something out to the console. So if we make that a public static final logger from log4j, logger, log manager from log4j as well, get logger. Let's pass in a name. I'm going to call this one tutorial mod logger. Okay, so now anytime we want to output something to the console, we can call tutorial mod.logger and then whatever logging method we want to use. That's the last thing we're going to do in here, just to tidy this up and make that a bit more useful going forward. So as I said, we're going to be adding Naquadah dust and Naquadah ingots. So the first thing we need to do is add a new package, which we are going to call init, like so. And in here, let's create the item group. So it used to be called, I believe, creative tabs in previous versions of Minecraft. It is now called item groups. The reason we want to do this is because we'd like all of our items to be contained under the same item group so that it's categorized under our mod. So we will have a tab with our own icon and our own name containing our stuff. So let's call that one mod item groups. Groups because we might have multiple ones going forward. Make that final. So in this video, at this present time, we're only going to have one. We only need one. We're just going to make it our main tab. But if we wanted to later going forwards, we could add one for machines, one for materials, one for tools, that kind of thing. Let's just stick with one for now. The first thing we're going to do is create a mod item group that extends the item group. Mod item group, and that's going to extend the item group from Minecraft. Okay, we are then going to add a private final supplier, and that supplier is going to provide an item stack also from Minecraft. Okay, let's call that one icon supplier. So this is basically going to be the supplier that provides the icon to be displayed in the tab. We'll see that in the game later. Let's add a constructor, and that is going to take in a string names. This is going to be the name of the unique name of your item group. We are also going to add in a supplier for an item stack, so a supplier to provide the icon, like so. Let's call super and pass the name in. So what this is doing is it's basically passing name into the constructor of the item group that we are extending. Then we are going to store away the icon supplier in our private variable that we created up the top, like so. And finally, we're going to override the create icon. So public item stack create icon, and that is going to return the icon supplier.get. So we're going to call get on the supplier to finally get the icon and return it. So this is all we need to do to create this mod item group. We will be using this to basically create all of our groups. So let's use it. So public static final item group, because that's what we're going to create. Let's call this one, let's just call this one main group, equals new mod item group. Let's pass it a name. So let's go with our tutorial mod.modid. That'll do. Then we're going to give it a supplier, which is going to return our new item stack, like so. And then this is going to be, so at the moment, I appreciate this won't exist, but it will do in a moment. So mod items dot ingot underscore Naquadah dot get. So I'll explain what the .get on the end of the ingot Naquadah does when we get to that bit, but that's essentially all we need to do to create our own group that will have a unique name of our mod ID. If we were adding multiple ones, we would basically do the same thing, but we might do the mod ID plus an underscore and some other category. So for example, mod ID underscore materials, and we might use a different icon, and we'd probably call that materials group or something like that. I'm just going to call this main group to be like the main mod group. That should suffice. So that's all we need to do in this particular file. So let's save that and close it. And now what we're going to do is create the mod items class. Here we go. So it's completely up to you how you want to do this, but I like to have a separate class to handle the registration of all the different types of items. So whether that's an item, a block, a sound, etc. You could just have one class that does the whole lot. I prefer to separate the concerns, so I like to create a mod items class like so. We now need to add our items, but before we can do that, we need to add a deferred register. Now, before I go into this, let's talk about registration. Okay, so in Minecraft Forge, the registration is the process of taking the objects out of your mod and registering it with, or registering them rather, with the game to make them known to the game. If you don't do this, then obviously not going to turn up in the game. So some of the things that you can register, obviously, as I've mentioned, is items, blocks, sounds, etc. So there are multiple ways of registering items, or objects rather, with Forge. The way I'm going to do it here, and the only one I'm going to walk you through at the moment, is deferred register. So deferred register is a way of registering the objects that replicates the simplicity of static initializers whilst supporting registry overrides, and it also avoids the issues caused by static initialization. So deferred register and the other methods of registration are documented pretty well in the Forge docs. I suggest having a scan over that to understand more about what the registration methods are and how you do them. But we're going to go with deferred register. That's what I prefer. So public static final deferred register, and this is going to take in item. So this is basically saying it's a, this needs to be the net Minecraft item. So this is saying this is going to be a deferred register of items. Now a deferred register contains registry objects of whatever the type is. So it will contain registry objects of items. So we'll cover that in a second. So items equals new deferred registry, deferred register rather, and then we need to tell it what Forge registry we want to create this register for. So let's go with Forge registries.items. As you can see, there's quite a lot there. We're going with items, and the mod ID is tutorial mod.modid. That's all we need to do to create the deferred register. Okay, so now let's create our items. So public static final registry objects, as I said, item, because that's what it's going to contain, dust Naquadah. Cool. And that's basically going to be items.register, and that's going to take in a name. So we're going to give it dust underscore Naquadah, and we're going to give it a supplier to create that item. So this is a basic item, so it's just item. I'm going to give it some properties, so new item.properties, and we're going to then use the group that we created earlier. So mod item groups dot main group. Okay, so let's just discuss what we've done here. So we've created a public property on here called Dust Naquadah. It is a registry object that has been registered against the items deferred registry, which is for being registered for the Forge registry's items. Okay, now the name needs to be a unique name, and usually a lot of mod owners like to follow conventions, so dust underscore, ingot underscore, maybe armor, I don't know, silver underscore chest piece or something like that. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, but just bear in mind that it's best to be all lowercase. And also any spaces need to be underscores. You can't have multiple words with spaces. No special characters either. And this name needs to be unique, and this name is going to be used in multiple places for translations and other things going forward. So it's very important that you use the same name everywhere. As we're going through, you'll realize. Let's just quickly copy and paste this for the other item. And this one here is going to be the ingot. Oops, that's the ingot. And we're going to put ingot here. I cannot spell today. Okay, so that is now our two items. As you can see, this one is already in use. The reason that is, if we close that and go back to our item groups, it is being used by our mod item group. So this is the icon that will be used. Okay, so that's all we need to do for that. What we now need to do is we need to make sure that we are actually registering the item. So although we've created this mod items class and it has a deferred register in here, and we're setting up our registry objects, we're not actually doing the registration with Forge. So what we need to do is in our main class, we need to add a constructor. So public tutorial mod. Inside here, we want to get a hold of the mod event bus. So we're going to call this one mod event bus, which is the FML loading FML Java mod loading context .get mod event bus. And then we're going to then take our mod items dot register with the mod event bus. So this is basically getting the mod event bus from the FML Java mod loading context and then registering our items against it. Okay, so that's all we need to do to handle the actual registration of the items. But at the moment, it will have a pink and black checkered texture because we haven't supplied one. And it might even complain because we haven't provided a model. I'm not actually sure what happens if you don't provide a model. But let's handle that now. So under resources, you're going to want to create a new folder called assets. Underneath that, you want to use your mod ID. So in my case, tutorial mod. And then underneath that, we want models. Within that models folder, let's create a new file, and that is going to be called dust_naquadah.json. And inside this file, we are going to add a bit of JSON, which is like this. And it's basically saying, I want this item to be generated. So this is using a built-in model baking thing that's provided. And what we're going to do is give it some textures. We're only going to have one layer. So we've only got one texture that we're going to apply. And what you need to do, so I copied this from another place where I was playing around with it. So put in tutorial mod. So this is the mod ID that you want there. Colon, then the type. So this is an item. And then you want dust_naquadah. So it matches the ID. I've just noticed that what we need to actually do is underneath the models folder, we need to actually create one called item. And then push that into that folder. The reason that is because under models, there's multiple types of models, and as this is an item, we need to put that in there. So we're going to do the same thing with the other one. So let's copy this, create a new file. Let's call that one ingot_naquadah.json. Same content again, but you're just going to change this to ingot. because again, this is a very basic item. It's just going to be generated, and we're going to use that texture. What it means by generated, by the way, is it will basically look at the texture and it will form a model from that texture. And then when it applies texture, the color on the very edge of it will become the edge piece because it will give it a bit of depth. So you'll see that when we throw the item on the floor and you see it. So that's those two models done. What we now want to do is create a new folder. So under the assets tutorial mod, we want to then create a textures folder, and underneath textures we're going to add an item folder. Now it's very important, pay attention to the fact that it's called models plural, but the items folder is item singular. Same with textures, multiple textures, but we're talking about a single item at this point. I think that's the convention that you'll find throughout. If you put items, it won't find it. If you put texture, it won't find it. So what we need to do now is in this textures.item folder, we need to add our textures. So I have posted a link in the description to two PNG files, one for the dust Naquadah and one for the ingot Naquadah. Copy and paste those into this folder. They're already named the same as I've done here, so you shouldn't need to rename them. So if you do that now, okay, so now that you've added those two items here, these two PNG files, that's our texture. So just to open up, you can see here, this is the Naquadah dust that I've created, and this is the Naquadah ingot that I've created. It's kind of a grayish kind of color. So once you put those in there, we have actually got all the bits we need apart from the languages, which we'll do next. But one note about these textures, I believe they need to be powers of 2. But other than that, I'm not sure what the rules are. I think most people seem to make them 16 by 16 pixels, and that's what I've been using. So let's collapse that down. And then under the assets tutorial mod, we're going to add one additional folder, and that's going to be called lang. And in there, we're going to create a JSON file, which we're going to call en_us.json. In here, it's a JSON object again. This is basically going to be key value pairs for your translations, your language localization entries. So the convention is usually what item it's talking about, your mod ID, and then the item or the thing, the object. So in this case, let's add the entry for the tab. So that's item group dot tutorial mod. Okay. So our main tab is just going to be this, but if we had another one, it might be item group.tutorialmod_materials. That's going to contain, let's go with tutorial, and we'll just call it tutorial. If it was materials, you might put tutorial mat materials, like so. But this is the main tab, so we're going to do that. Next, we're going to add our item.tutorialmod. And then this is where we're then going to add our dust_Naquadah, like so. That's the text that I would like. Copy and paste that. This becomes the ingot. This becomes ingot. And that's all we need to do for the actual language entries for our mod at this time. So let's close that down. We should have everything we need in place. So let's press play and let's see if it loads up. Hopefully what we'll find is that the mod is still loaded. So we'll check that first, because then that saves loading into the world if it's not even loaded. We shouldn't have any console errors such as, oh, can't find a model or can't find a texture. If that does happen, let's cover it. If it doesn't happen, but it happens for you guys, just let me know and I will try to assist via the comments on this video. It doesn't look like there's any problems so far. And let's go have a look. Still loading up, and I'll make this a bit bigger so you guys can see. Mods, we can see that my mod is there. That's good. Single player. Let's create a world. I'm just going to call this one tutorial. In fact, tutorial mod. Let's make it creative. Go to more options. I'm going to use a seed of tutorial mod world. That'll do. We want cheese on. We're going to give ourselves items in the game, obviously. Let's create that world. It'll take a little while just to load up and generate the initial spawn area. But once we've done that, we should be able to give ourselves the dust and the ingot and see it in the nice item group tab, or what was known as creative tabs. Let's just go out here a little bit. Okay, so we've got some space here to throw it down. So open up your inventory, which is the creator bit. If we go across, here is our tab. It's called tutorial, which is what we put in the lang file. There's our icon that we chose. If we go in there, we can see the Naquadah dust and the Naquadah ingot. Give ourselves some of these items. We can chuck it on the floor. Same with this one. And as you see, when it's spinning around, it's not flat. It's got like a slight depth to it. And as you can see, it's taking the color from the outside of the edge and use that on the very outside. But that's basically the generated model that we chose. And that's it really for this video. We've got 2 resources. So in the next video, we're going to look at creating a Naquadah ore block. What we're going to do is just create that block, and if I have enough time, we'll cover some very basic ore generation just to get it into the world. I thought it would be quite nice because then you can get out your pick, go find it, dig it up, you get your ore, and then in the following videos we're going to look at smelting that via smelting recipes into the ingots, and then using those to create other tools. The dust will cover at a later date when we look at some machines to pulverize or grind down these ingots, or also grind down the ore to then become 2 dust to cook. So rather than 1 ore to 1 ingot, you get 2 dust which you can then cook into 2 ingots. Okay, so that's it for this video, and I will see you next time.